Yesterday and last night was a rough night. I was triggered yesterday, and then I was talking to a friend after on FaceTime and got some distressing news that's not completely related to me per se, but I don't get distressed only by things that relate to me. It relates to being human and sort of distressing unsolved news that relates to some details in my life too. So after talking, I just felt really, really disturbed by that. Really disturbed, and I had trouble sleeping, and I felt so much pain in my body and fear for this news that I heard. So again, life brought me back down to earth. And I'm still distressed by it, and I'm feeling kind of depressed today, and I didn't have a very good sleep. I think the sleep cycle shows I slept better than I did because I was still awake at 1:30, and I had to get up and take 1 extra zinc and 1 extra sunflower lecithin because I took 1 zinc at bedtime and 3 sunflower lecithin, so, or maybe 4, so I had to get up and take the 5th sunflower lecithin. And I did fall asleep, but I didn't go to that breathing workshop this morning because I would have had to get up at like 8 or something. There's one again tomorrow, and I don't know if it's part 1 and part 2. So I might email to ask if I can go tomorrow if I sleep better. And I wanted to go, and that's the thing that happens is when I sort of hit the wall, there's some things I want to go to, and then I don't get to go. And I feel like I can't go. Like last night I felt like, oh man, I just can't drive all that way. It's like a really long drive. Probably an hour or so. It's only a 2-hour thing. So I'm kind of feeling like lately I've been doing a lot. I've been seeing a lot of friends, talking to friends on Skype and on the phone and things, getting a lot done, doing everything at once, and I sort of feel like being a bit of a hermit and staying home, saving money on gas. I do have to work on Wednesday, and then just kind of minimizing that sort of thing. It could just be this state of mind talking, and this could be more of the lowest common denominator I was talking about. So yesterday, learning and my brain really energized isn't sustainable, and it was interesting that life brought me down, and that's okay. I'm not saying that in a bad way, because people with so-called bipolar can be in like really creative states, and then someone comes in to talk to them and they snap at them and they're like, well, they're moody. Well, I don't think it's mood. It's just sort of really dissonant or far away levels of consciousness, and that creates the appearance of a mood. So I was in a really heightened state of consciousness, learning, and then learning about things happening in the world is like, oh my God. It brings it back down to the world consciousness, like oh my God, like this world is just awful sometimes. And so yeah, today I'm going to take dopamine and rhodiola. These are 2 things I haven't been taking. But since they're supposed to help with depression, I'm going to experiment and see how they make me feel. I don't know if this is the right strategy because I didn't have the best sleep last night. But I'm going to try it anyway and see what happens to my sleep tonight. If my sleep gets even more messed up after taking this today, then I think the strategy is to go with the lower state, like be in the state of kind of depression. because I could say, well, I'll stop taking glycine and taurine or take less of those or some of the calming things. But last night I didn't feel calm. I felt fearful and awful. And so I don't know how much I can boost the depression, and I don't know if I need to. I'm not sure if I'm experiencing trouble like a month and a half before the major crisis, or if it'll sort of be mini crises along the way because of how I'm neutralizing things with the meds or the supplements, or I don't know if it'll be harder because I'm taking the antipsychotics, and that could bring on something worse because it's sort of allowing me to be in more of the fearful energy, but not experience it as much, but part of me is still experiencing it. So it is building up some kind of allostatic load of stress. At least that's what I feel. So it could be worse. I don't know. Or, yeah. I know for sure if I didn't have the supplement strategy, I would have had to take more meds by now. So today I'm going to work on my crisis plan and other things that I need to work on for indoor stuff, and yeah, just see what happens. And that's the other thing with different events that have happened recently. I didn't even have to ask to go to California or wonder if I should. It's sort of obvious now that I'm not going to go to California right now. I will be staying here for the month of May. If I was still feeling really good, maybe, but even then, probably not. So I think that's good to know. And now I can plan this month accordingly. Had I felt continuously good up until now and I decided not to go to California, I'd probably plan a bunch of things to do, but I'll probably keep it to a minimum of being in nature, maybe cleansing my body a bit, like infrared sauna, enema, eating healthy, getting outside, not going too far, hopefully, because I've been driving a lot lately, and settling in and see if I get to a point where I want to talk about those insights or write about them or what. So we'll see what the dopamine boost does. Maybe it'll help me to get the crisis plan done. Because like I was saying yesterday, based on how things were going, I was about to go into the insights and then got brought back down to earth, which is totally fine. And yeah, keep going with supplements, and yeah, I have lots to do, so hopefully this dopamine boost helps me get this last bit of indoor stuff done. And maybe it is a sign to be out in nature and not getting too high into these insights, because then something's going to have to bring me down, back down to earth, back down to the level that is actuality. I was talking about how these insights seem like an epiphenomenon of going up in consciousness, but again, they're not really congruent with the moment. They would be if I was going up with someone else and I was able to talk about them, and then that's why I want to talk about them with myself. And that was helpful when I was doing that, and I would kind of like to do that, because now the insights aren't really so much related to ranting about mental health. I feel like I've grown past that a little bit. So that's why it might be nice to talk about that stuff. But that's good enough for now, and I'll talk a little bit more later or make those plans videos later. So I did my crisis plan video, and I'm going to put it next in my videos list here, but I'm also going to put it on my phone where I don't have to have access to internet, because if I go into Sanctuary, the internet connection might not be that good. And I'll also create an audio version probably. I don't know if it's complete, but the rest of it is also practicing what I set up. So I labeled all the supplements that I will take during crisis, like inositol, uridine, and SAMe, brain gastro, and alpha GCP, and CDP choline, or GPC, alpha GPC. And there's lots of sound in my brain today. I can really hear that sound, like. And also today I took a cold shower for a couple minutes after my warm shower. I read online that it's good for reducing stress. I think it said it reduces or releases norepinephrine, which probably is the opposite antagonist of epinephrine, which is stress, adrenaline. So I did that today and it felt invigorating. So I'll try to keep up with that. And I've been using a dry brush too to get my circulation going, because once I get all these plans in order, I would like to get back to cleansing my body. And today I took 1 cap of high potency turmeric. It says only take 1 cap a day, which is good because it's a 60 cap bottle. So the $30 bottle will last me 2 months instead of 1. And then I'll take 1 cap of the other stuff that I got in the evening, which isn't high potency, but at least that way I'll use it up. And then another thing I discovered today was that they're now having callouts for the MAPS phase 2 clinical trials of MDMA assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. And I'm going to contact them. I don't know if I'll qualify because I also have a BP diagnosis, bipolar, so that might disqualify me. But I'm still going to try and contact them and see. So yeah, today and yesterday, certain wonderings have become knowings in terms of not going to California, and also booking time off work in June to go into Sanctuary to do what Jason Silva says in his video, The Creative Act, and setting up these crisis plans and doing some computer stuff. So that's what I'm doing today, and I'll put my crisis plan video next in this. And I'm trying to make my videos more like half an hour right now because it's a lot of work to organize all the separate ones. If I do 15 minutes videos, that's twice as much work. So yeah, we'll see if I have more to say on this one, but crisis video will be next. So my mood has definitely shifted. I don't know if I've officially hit the wall. I don't think so, because usually that's experienced by feeling really suicidal, even just in my brain. But I'm still recovering from being triggered yesterday. I'm wondering if it has anything to do with donating blood, because it's a lot of stress on the body, and maybe I don't have enough oxygen, and so maybe that's lowering the vibration of consciousness. I don't know. And I did take 4,000 milligrams of taurine and 6,000 milligrams of glycine before dinner. And then I also took lithium orotate, 10 milligrams before dinner instead of waiting till after. And I took a liquid vitamin C. And it seemed to help. And then I sat down and I colored for a while. And then I made dinner. I didn't eat all of it. I'm not super hungry. But I was feeling fear and like my brain needs sedating. So I was wondering about taking branched chain amino acids, but I'll see how I sleep tonight. Because I did take the tyrosine today. So tomorrow I'm going to do no tyrosine. See if this fear feeling is there tomorrow. And then if it is, I will do branched chain amino acids and see if that neutralizes some of the fear, because that's really uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if the crisis is coming early. I think I was struggling at this time last year. This might have been when the struggles were coming on, and then I started to go off meds. And I'm wondering if I'll lose my executive functioning, because that's sometimes what happens, and then I'm not able to do much of anything. I can't drive, I can't think. So I have all these things listed down to do right now on paper sitting over there, and I might stick them all in Google Keep so they're kept. And then maybe get down to basics. I do want to finish uploading the audio videos to YouTube and organizing that tomorrow if I can, because it's not going to be super warm. But Monday it's going to start being really nice outside, so I think that'll be the clue to getting outside. And then maybe when I am inside, not doing all this brainy stuff, but making music and laying low and resting. And yeah, I just don't know if it's been triggered early. It doesn't feel like a full-blown crisis, but it feels like a lowering of consciousness, that in this lower state of consciousness, I have access to far fewer gestures. Less gestures of wanting to learn. I think I could do it right now, like my executive functioning isn't totally gone, but I just don't really feel like I'm in the mood for it. So I'm glad that I did the crisis stuff, the planning, while I was still in the mood. It's almost like in the nick of time I did it, possibly, because this crisis might be coming early. And on Monday, I'll go to Costco and another grocery store and stock up on a few things. I like to make broccoli with Indian sauce and lentils. So if I have the Indian sauce and the lentils and other ingredients, then all I need on a daily basis is kind of like broccoli and spinach for my smoothies. And I'll get more blueberries. So that would be good if I had most of those things, because I could probably get someone to get me broccoli and spinach. So if this isn't a crisis, it's at least a lower state of consciousness, and wondering if I'll be able to fully come out of that or what. And also, if it stays low for a long period of time, then I will maybe get a job, because that's a good time to go out and make some money, I think. I don't know though for sure, because I might feel like I feel like locking myself in a cave right now. Not locking myself in a cave, but just staying away from things. I spent a couple weeks really doing a lot, and I feel like I'm with this bipolar biorhythm. It's not like I can do a lot for weeks and months and months. It's a couple weeks, and then I feel like I have to change and be a totally different person. And it's not like I have to change, it's just there's a change. And I can hear that sound in my brain, so I did do the Muse monitor to see what my brain looked like, and it does look like it's creating quite a bit of sound, and the temporal lobes are quite active again. And my breathing isn't tense really today. I don't think I've had any tense breathing today. So the whole subjective experience or mood tracker doesn't really correlate with the Spire. The Spire seems to correlate more with when I'm out with other people, like out driving, out visiting a friend. There's some correlation there in terms of mirroring the breathing or who I'm with or what I'm doing. But right now I'm at home and I do feel not good, and the Spire isn't picking that up. That Cardia thing might pick it up, like my heartbeat. It could be also doing this relaxation audio, could be allowing me to stay relaxed even though these really uncomfortable feelings are filtering through me. I'm not sure. So there's no tense breathing in the physiology, and I think that might be related to the autonomic nervous system. So perhaps I'm in parasympathetic mode, but subjectively I feel stressed. And there's no reason why in this moment now, actually related to my circumstances now, that I should feel that way. So it's the past, it's a thought storm, it's whatever that is. And I did feel a bit more calm after taking the lithium before dinner, so it could also be that I need more lithium. Maybe I do need to take 30, 10 in the morning, 10 in the afternoon, and 10 in the evening, and not 5, 10, and 10, which is what I did today. It's hard to say. And I also wonder if I went too far into meaning, significance, and insight. And Dr. David Bohm wrote an essay called Soma Significance, and it's really fascinating. And I wonder that the more I go into the significance aspect, the further it moves me out of Soma, or if it's too significant and that doesn't quite correlate with the current Soma, the current experience, or the average experience moving through eternity, then perhaps it's kind of distressing to see the significance. And I also wonder if going so far into seeing meaning and significance this way means I'm going to have to see meaning and significance the other way. That's not nice and not good. Feels awful. Like the things that I heard about yesterday. It kind of feels like if I was to actually watch the news, which I never do, because it's all bad news and it would make me feel awful. Just like getting 2 bits of bad news and really, really feeling awful about it, like so sensitive to it, and seeing much more significance in it than just the words of the news XYZ or blah blah blah. It's like, oh, those are nice words, but like really seeing the significance of what that's pointing to. And it's challenging. Maybe by feeling the significance, that's helpful to the collective consciousness somehow. I don't know. I'd like to imagine it so. I remember a couple years ago when I was talking to myself, or whenever it was, talking about Matt Kahn, talking about how he would, when he brushes his teeth, he's like, every time I brush my teeth, I heal 1,000 people in Africa or something. I can kind of see why he would do that, because right now I feel like saying like, oh, every second I feel this pain is healing someone else's pain, or to make sense of it, because why is it here otherwise? Maybe that family constellation lady can help me. And the thing is, if this crisis comes early, I'm not in beauty like I wanted to be. The downward movement is so painful. And it's subtly painful, sort of like how I experienced 2 weeks of subtle pain before my last crisis. It was like October 1st to October 16th or something. So if this subtle pain is here for 2 weeks, that might be enough to make me hit the wall. And maybe it'll happen early May instead of mid-June. In a way, it could be better, because then maybe I'll be on my way out of feeling terrible by June and summertime. I don't know. I feel like saying, please, God, let everyone be okay. People don't want to know how interconnected we are. And I made my crisis plan, transformation plan sheet color-coded, just to sort of break up the areas like, what's that one? Supplements to subtract, adding tranquilizer supplements, the BDNF neuroplasticity wants to continue, knockout supplements and meds, branched chain amino acids, don't forget about that. I do want to try that. And alpha GCP, brain gastrodin, all these things. Once I hit the wall, if I'm in suicidal depression, what to do. You know, if I start feeling suicidally depressed, which I thought I was going to experience after I hit the wall, like a big hitting of the wall, then I would start to take these now if I start feeling that way. See what happens. One good thing is, even though my consciousness state has lowered, I haven't gotten any arguments with anyone or anything yet. I'm wondering if I can keep this all to myself. I did go out for a little walk, and it did feel a little bit better to do that. And tonight I'll do my brain training, relaxation, and just sort of lay low. I got really organized today, but now I'm not really feeling like doing anything that I wrote down to do. So we'll see how I feel tomorrow. Today I woke up feeling depressed. We'll see if I wake up feeling depressed again. And I'd rather stay depressed than boost dopamine and then feel fear. Depression isn't as bad as fear. So that's where I'm at. I do have a bunch of insights written down. I wonder if going into any of them would make me feel a little bit better. We'll see what happens tomorrow. All right, me. This is your crisis plan video, and me reminding me that I will again wander with love. You're going through a rough time. You might be feeling suicidal. Remember, you die in your brain so that others don't have to, and you'll get through this. But to get down to business, don't forget to wear these blue blockers more if you want to sleep. And if you're in a sanctuary, use a sleep mask to simulate total darkness and spend as much time as you can doing that. I'll start off with, if you're feeling suicidal, you want to take uridine. There's 3 things you want to take. Uridine, SAMe, and inositol. These are things that you'll only take on the extremely depressed, suicidal days. You can take 4 to 8 SAMe and 10 to 20 of these uridine. You also have powder that you bought later, so you would take 2,000 to 5,000 twice a day. So this would be 5 or 10 caps twice a day. And you'll have a scoop for this. And the other thing you can take is inositol, between 5,000 and 9,000 milligrams 2 times per day. And you will have a scoop for that. I'm not sure if there's a scoop in here. And you want to increase blue light. And you also might want to take these branched chain amino acids before that happens. And you would take 30 to 40 grams. I think there's 2 pouches in here. It says 30-40 grams twice a day on an empty stomach with juice. It tastes really bad. And the other things you're going to want to start are, and this is on a daily basis, not only on the suicide days, alpha GPC, 2 caps twice a day, brain gastrodin, 1 cap twice a day, and CDP choline, 1 cap twice a day. So that is what's going to get you through, hopefully. And of course you also have more medication, PRNs. You have this sheet with everything outlined that I will update. You have trazodone, Seroquel, benzodiazepine, sleeping pills, and you also have Benadryl. And there are, after a week, you want to start adding in tyrosine, D-L-phenylalanine, rhodiola, and skullcap, maybe, but you might be already taking skullcap. And the ones you want to keep taking continuously, that you'll habitually be taking anyway, so you don't really need to remember this too much. Polygala, Bacopa, skullcap, magnolia bark, Jiaogulan, high-potency turmeric, biopurine, lithium orotate, primidophilus, this is in the freezer, probiotic, omega fish oil in the freezer, tryptophan. You can also, in a crisis, up the tryptophan to 1 to 2,000 milligrams a day. Usually you take 1,000 milligrams at night. St. John's wort, 2 per day, magnesium, zinc. You can up the zinc, taurine. You can up taurine. You can up glycine, vitamin C, aspirin, and sunflower lecithin, melatonin. And if you're really struggling and you're in sanctuary, you have Save on Foods grocery delivery. You also have the Spiritual Emergence phone number line. You can call help you. Those last 2 are local. And also you can keep measuring your breath with Spire. You might have the Cardia device to measure your ECG as well, and the Muse headband to see what your brain waves are doing. And you'll want to stop and vary the tyrosine and rhodiola leading up to the crisis. And it could happen a little differently because you're navigating things with supplements right now. And also remember, you can always press your phone 5 times on the home screen lock button to send your location and a text message to friends. And don't forget about Zap Strap or handcuffs to keep your body safe if you're feeling unsafe. Though you haven't needed these types of interventions, You can also look into ordering sarcosine or D or L-serine, I'm not sure which one, on Amazon USA for sarcosine, and D or L-serine is on either Amazon USA or Amazon.ca. And I'll add more if there's more, but beware of the psychotic aspect. And you might be going from perfectly okay to suicidally depressed overnight, but you will be okay. If you're local and in town, you might want to do the metabolic panel P test. But you do need to be off supplements for 3 days to do that, so it might not be something that you can do this time around. There's also an acetylcysteine, which you want to continue when you're in a crisis. And you can continue the other things you're taking. Keep in mind that skullcap and magnolia bark and bacopa and polygala also do work on dopamine. So you're taking those continuously, so you might not need to take the tyrosine as much. You have bright light therapy, and you also have your sad light. And you'll be looking forward to doing things like going to the beach, rollerblading, stand-up paddleboarding, going to the fruit fest, exploring wild edibles, camping, planting fruit trees, designing the dream center, especially if you're able to have a transformative experience in a beautiful place. So keep on going. You can do this. Yesterday I had some of that body pain, and I'm feeling like it's a little bit similar to how it started last time in October, how I started feeling this body pain about 2 weeks before the major crisis hit, and I lost all executive functioning and went into a really bad energy place where it trickled out into all my experience. So everything that I experienced was drama. And I kind of fear that's going to happen again. Maybe some real drama will happen, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm wondering if I can create a life where not as much executive functioning is needed. The trouble is if there's drama and I get booted out of my living situation, then that could be really bad. But last night when I was feeling that sort of anxious, painful energy, I at some point laid down and put my legs up on some pillows to listen to that calming audio that I'm listening to by Peter Smith. And the anxieties turned into kind of an ecstasy. And I remember somebody telling me to just lay there with your legs up. And maybe that's a resting position that is important. And to do that intermittently. And then also today, I looked up HeartMath because I'm curious about what the heart is doing. And that's why I ordered that Kardia device, which I might not have needed because the HeartMath device seems kind of cool. It seems like it relates heartbeat to emotional state. So they say different heart rhythms correlate to different emotional states. So by doing that and doing their little exercise, we can get back into coherence and be calm. Because the Kardia will give me raw ECG data and probably tell me if I'm in atrial fibrillation, which I don't think is really a problem for me. But I wanted to capture the raw data to see if I could figure it out myself in terms of what the raw data means according to emotional states, because I'm finding the Spire doesn't correlate to my subjective experience. but perhaps the heart rhythm does. And it looks like this HeartMath device does that. It's sort of like the Complete Coherence app that I have. Breathing in coherence is a way to get the physiology in tune, like having the heart and breath in coherence. So there could still be value in that, but this HeartMath device, it looks like it analyzes the heart rhythm in order to see what emotional state you're in, and then change your heart rhythm to cohere with the moment. Like if I'm safe in the moment and I'm feeling anxious, then do something to get my heart rhythm in coherence with the state now. So we'll see. It seems that I can't stop ordering these biofeedback devices and supplements and things. And I'm thinking that it is helpful because otherwise all these energies are around me, whatever that means. And then I have to process them, and there's no way to speed them up or slow them down or understand them in physiological ways. So taking the vitamins will help me to take the control stick, and then having the biofeedback devices will help me to understand what's happening at a physiological level. And then once I have the HeartMath, maybe taking certain vitamins changes my heart rhythm. Because I have felt that the heart is even more fundamental, because in the states where I wake up at night and my heart is going like ba-boom, 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 and I'm having these freaky experiences in mine, the heart rhythm is very, very precise in terms of a certain type of beat, and it's with that rhythm it's creating this sort of in my mind. So I think, yeah, it'll be good to see if there's any correlation there. And like I said, if I was in a beautiful place, just living in a forest, maybe I wouldn't need all these 100 supplements and these million different biofeedback devices. But that's what I'm doing now. And today is Earth Day, so I'll get out for a walk later, but hopefully tomorrow will be Earth Day for me, because it'll be a bit nicer. And I want to start getting outside. And I do have someone calling me about doing some work, but I'm just not sure if right now is the right time, because I kind of feel like my executive functioning might be gone in a couple weeks, because I'm starting to experience this body pain like I did last time. So I was thinking crisis might happen mid-June, but it might happen sooner. I think it might. And I hope it's just an inner crisis and there's not outer disaster stuff happening. It could happen that way. Just because I'm finding a little bit of bad stuff, bad information is coming towards me. But anyway, today I might see if the branched chain amino acids brings down this body pain experience, to see if this pain is related to too much dopamine. I didn't take tyrosine today when I took it yesterday, and I think I took it yesterday, or I might not have. See, I'm losing track. Either way, I slept well. I took a bunch of sleep vitamins, kind of maxed out on the initial dose, and I went to sleep. And that was good. I had a good long sleep. I think if I'm able to continue to sleep like 8, 9, 10 hours a night, then I should be okay. And I was going to return the Dream Sleeper. I've been talking about how I'm not sure if it's a good one. But then I found out it's not eligible for returns. So in ordering all this stuff on Amazon, I will have to look closer at the return policy. I thought anything you order, you can return. But maybe not if they're from outside sellers using the Amazon platform. So yeah, I have the HeartMath device, the Cardia device, and the oxygen saturation device coming towards me. Hopefully they won't arrive at a time when I'm not even able to use them or understand how they work anymore. If this body pain accelerates and I'm not able to tone it down with anything, maybe I will stop taking my vitamins for 3 days and do the pee test, since I am at home right now and I could potentially drop it off at the naturopath office. So there's a lot of different things to consider right now, and that's why I'm saying it's kind of like a full-time job. And I don't know, especially with these signs of executive functioning possibly disappearing, if it's a good time to pick up extra stuff. And that's why I'm wondering if I can design a lifestyle for when executive functioning disappears. Usually that lifestyle designs itself. It's eating whatever's there, not even remembering how to make food or prepare food for oneself, laying down watching Netflix, and that's it. But maybe I can make some music or go for a drive and sing or different things that don't require executive functioning. So that's why I was talking to myself about putting some of these notes that I have on my desk right now, to-do lists, in Google Keep, because once my executive functioning goes, I won't be able to do that. And then these papers will get lost somewhere, and then I'll forget what I was doing. Usually that doesn't matter so much because I'm able to just pick up from scratch again and pick up with whatever's sort of around me. That's why I like things out visible, because I can see them. And Dr. Peter Smith got back to me about our last consultation, and I was asking if it was D or L serine that's good for psychosis. And it's D serine, so I tried to order it from Amazon.com, but they don't ship to Canada. So I ordered it directly from the manufacturer website, and it was $50 with shipping, and maybe there'll be some customs. But there aren't that many supplements that are good for psychosis in particular, and Peter Smith said that's one of them. So I'm going to have it on hand and keep it as one of the possibilities to take if sort of this psychosis starts to happen, this psychosis aspect. And I am feeling like I'm definitely sped up. I've realized I was singing to Celine Dion's Ave Maria rendition, and I was singing to it, but she was always behind me in singing. So I feel that singing a song that one knows, and it's sort of a slow, beautiful song, if one's sort of singing faster, though one feels like one's slowing it down as much as possible, it's a sign that one is in a faster reality. And so that could be a way to see, like, am I sped up right now? I don't feel like I'm sped up, but if I sing this song and it's unfolding in 3D time and space, yet I'm singing faster, just a bit faster, a word or two faster maybe, then maybe I'm sped up. And I'm also wondering, when one realizes one has no boundaries, one is boundless, and there's no ego self-protection, if one must live in beauty, because everything gets in. And I think I'm absorbing everything, and it's starting to be really painful. And so that pain eventually sort of collapses. And also, he said I can take the Jiao Gulan continuously or after the crisis or during. He's not quite sure. One thing I learned is that I should not take Bacopa 1 day a week, which is the same with NAC and also rhodiola. And I bought concert tickets to Deva Premal because I want to go, though maybe I'll be too out of it and not able to, because I am really starting to feel this pain. And I'm wondering if part of the difference is the lithium orotate. I've been taking that different kind, the advanced research, Hans Napier brand. And also, I don't know if I'll be able to prevent this. I was thinking it would happen later, but maybe it's not going to. Maybe because I spent more time in beauty, that this type of environment will collapse upon me sooner. And I'm not sure. When I had the crisis in October, that's when I had to start staying indoors more. So it could also be that I need to get outside more to prolong the onset of this. And I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. And it could be good to take jiaogulan, curcumin, bacopa, and magnolia bark continuously. I also learned that I need to take polygallop potentially on an empty stomach. So those are some of the things I wrote down to check in about with myself. I've written a lot of other notes too that are a bit disjointed, and I've been having an insight into, oh, I should write a book. But then now, with feeling like this body pain could be a sign and a warning that executive functioning is going to disappear soon again, it's not good to start writing a book now. I won't even know what it is that I started to create. So that's why I like talking to myself on video. So maybe forgetting about that book thing and talking about some of this on video every day to catch up with it a little bit. And then designing a life not needing executive functioning, like creating music and being outside and not putting the pressure about that executive functioning thing. There's something I have to do for work today that requires executive functioning. Then after that, after Wednesday, maybe I won't need it so much. So we'll see. So I'm going to talk about some of these insights, and it might be a little disjointed just because I have to look at it and then talk, and I don't know if I want to go back and edit, because that only produces more information or more insights. But I had an insight when I was upstairs pouring my tea water that it could be that the heart's beating faster to keep up with the demand for oxygen for this sort of sped up process, or it could also be sped up relative to the consensus or the resonant morphic field around one. So if one's heart or one's being is attempting to resonate faster than the average resonance, then it could be beating faster in terms of relativity of consciousness, and there could be relativity in physiology as well. I think there is. I experienced that before. Like people who have frequent bowel movements or something like that, they're operating in a different time space relative. So relative to the consensus, I don't know if I want to call it consensus, I don't know what it's called. They're moving at a different speed, so their body's not processing things as well, and then they have it more often relative to the consensus because they're moving faster. I don't know. It's hard to really delineate, but I think I was talking yesterday about this a little bit, about going too far into meaning and significance and insight, and that brings one too far out of the soma, or one's mind vibration, or the significance of life starts to move faster than the material body can move. Because one can imagine a beautiful place and that one is there in an instant, but if one wanted to move from where they are now to that exact beautiful place, that would take some planning, that would take time, that would take some kind of travel plans, things like that. So I think too, seeing a lot of meaning in what is here now, when the morphic resonance that is average would only allow for others to perceive that. Sometimes that also brings some kind of incoherence, even though it feels like it shouldn't necessarily do that. I don't know how that all works. And even right now with this energy I'm feeling, it's like kind of painful, and it's like this warning sign that things are going to come tumbling down. It could be a warning sign that I'm moving too fast. It could be a warning sign that there's nothing I can do to stop it, but at least there's a warning sign. It could be a warning sign that it's going to accumulate and implode upon itself. And I might think, well, I should be in a beautiful space now, and I'm not. So, could be in somewhat of a danger of experiencing old patterns that I don't necessarily want to, but might be necessary. And so I was writing down that it could be interesting to design a perceptually safe space. I was reading a document that said, oh, let's create an emotionally safe space for emotions. And that's necessary, of course. But I was wondering if one can design a perceptually safe space, like a forest is very perceptually safe, except there could be animals, of course, that might attack a human being. But in terms of the visionscape, it's all sort of beautiful and depending on the weather. So even a forest isn't necessarily perceptually safe, but it's less likely perhaps to bring about old traumatic patterns. And that might not necessarily be true either, because maybe lifetimes ago or family generations ago, another family experienced some kind of trauma in a forest. So there's no real absolute here. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, but with this energy I'm feeling some kind of distress is coming, and I'm hoping that it's more like a psychosis, like imagined distress, but not really happening. Because what happened the other day was, it wasn't imagined distress. It was like distressing. It's like reading a distressing news post online or something. It was distressing for real. And I feel like maybe there could be real distress from the past, because that's sort of what I went through in October on, but it created these patterns and scenes and drama that I felt are more appropriate for family constellation meetup. So I'm hoping I can get back to another one of those. There's one on May 5th. So it'd be nice to process some of that there. And then depending on how that goes, I might go to the one in early June. So I was thinking that for my transformation plan, I am going into a perceptually safe space. Because I think a lot of what's happening in these so-called disorders of mental whatever is that one's brain is moving faster. It's able to process light, which is more light available for more information now, to perceive and act based on the now, but every moment in time is contained in the now. So what can happen is that perception, even though it's seeing things now and acting on them, like this cup of tea and drinking it without thinking about it, it's just able to see it in peripheral vision and then pick it up and drink it without thinking, now I'm going to have a cup of tea, which is action based on sound and programming. Perception can extrapolate and see a lot more events of the past and possible futures because of this perception action. So that's why it can be helpful to not be around so many people during these sensitive times, because perception can extrapolate back to old periods in time, perhaps even lifetimes before, and then reenact dramas to probably bring them into awareness and see what they're doing, but I don't know what else. And then one has to sort of act that out even though one doesn't want to, which I can see is sort of related to how people might act out violence and be not aware of it or not wanting to, but feeling like they have to. But these are old patterns that, if we're still acting in those ways, but just refined somewhat, like now I'm not violent in this way, but there's still violence in other ways, then that violent energy is still going to resonate with the old violent patterns, and people are going to act them out again. And, we just end up being puppets of all these generations of trauma in our DNA. I don't know why I'm saying all this. I just started making it up. But yeah, I don't really want to get back into that. And then if I'm not in this space with people around, it won't necessarily get acted out on. So I'm feeling like I'll be safe in this space, but maybe not. I don't know. And it also could be this energy is telling me, well, there's more stuff to process. You've gone so far one way into upper levels of consciousness that now I need to resolve some old patterns. And then so the old patterns come back to be enacted and moved through, and then everything is fine again at some point. Hopefully. So everything will be fine again at some point. I don't know, I'm feeling some kind of like premonitions right now, and I don't want to say them because they may or may not be true. This is where not believing thought or even subtle intuition can come in handy, because who knows if it's true. And it could be true in these nonlinear states. It could be something that's true in 10 or 20 years, not in 10 or 20 minutes or 10 or 20 days. We really don't know. We don't know anything other than the moment. So yeah, so the brain is more based on perception action. And since all time is now, one can perceive subtle patterns from the past and sort of get trapped in enacting them in one's life and in other people's life patterns. Like, we sort of get attracted to, I think it was Dr. David Hawkins who said, attractor patterns. That, I could be walking by. Actually, I had this experience when I was going to pick up medication, or asking if I could get medication, if it was time for my prescription. And I was standing there waiting for the pharmacist, and then this man came up behind me and he sort of like budged in front of me, and I was like, and he just was kind of looking at me. And then I said to him, like, can I go, in like a snarky way when the person came up? And I didn't realize he had probably been standing there before and then kind of walked away and came back. But he didn't communicate that. He just kind of stood there. And I'm like, why did I even say that? And I kind of realized, and I don't want to put the blame somewhere else, but I realized that that was probably how that person creates people responding to them, is in like a snarky way to confirm their belief that everyone in the world is snarky. So sometimes we act in ways and we don't know why, and it's because we're compassionately acquiescing to how another person perceives reality and confirming that for them, unfortunately. So I don't know if that's true, but I've written down like 2 sentences here and I've talked for like 10 minutes. So that's when there's all this other information that comes out of reading what I've written. And yeah, so light is fundamental, and perception. The more light, the more we can perceive. And perception can extrapolate eternity. And also, there are no boundaries. So I don't know where I begin and I don't know where I end. And then I wrote down, you never began, so you never end. That sounds kind of Alan Watts-ish, and I don't know where that came from, but this whole there's no boundaries is related to how we are totally interconnected. We're totally related. There really is no boundary, but the ego boundary is this protection that we put up. So in this transformation process and a transformational crisis, we often lose our ego boundary and we're left completely vulnerable. And we see we have no boundaries, so we're affected by all of those around us. And now I'm realizing that a so-called traumatic event of mine was actually sort of transformational in a way. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but so the thing is that when we enter into eternity and we're all one, we're alone. I've heard and I've read that before. That is not original. Most of what I say is pretty original, but this all alone equals all one is not original, that's for sure. And even though it's original, I don't mean that I thought of it myself. It's coming from somewhere else. I'm not thinking this stuff up. It's only by not having anything in my brain that something else can speak through me. And I guess it's kind of like channeling, but I don't even know if it's channeling. I think it could be more that at a higher resonance, one is able to access different words, a different form of communication altogether. Recently, I watched the video of a housewife on LSD. The experiments they did is so funny because at one point, the experimenter asked her something and she's like, "It would be all one if you weren't here." And then she's like, "No, it has nothing to do with you. I am one." And that's sort of where I'm at in processing right now. It's like, am I one? Am I all one? It doesn't matter who's around. I don't know. So what I'm trying to say, though, is we need to put up these artificial boundaries. Meaning, we know there are no boundaries, but we can put up some artificial ones. And how can we do that? Well, some of it is by changing our physiology. So I have no boundaries. Things passively hit me, like whatever information comes to me, and I can't stop it from coming to me and seeing it or feeling it. And it accumulates and it builds up this stress. But then I can take some physiological things like supplements to mitigate some of that. So it's not really setting up a boundary, but it is in terms of it's saying, okay, now I've had too much information overload. I'm going to take these vitamins and supplements to transmute or translate or reduce or mitigate some of that, knowing that I have no boundaries. So in a way, it sets up a boundary, and then it's saying, okay, enough. My body can only process so much. I need to take something to neutralize that. And the thing is, and I have a lot more to talk about with that, is that if we don't do that, if we don't learn to set up these artificial boundaries or lack of boundary neutralizers, realizing that we're interconnected, it's all one, and then still being in situations where one doesn't necessarily want to be one with that. But one is, because one is there, but one would like to move towards something that is easier to be one with, in that there's not so much needing to take stuff to neutralize this. So if we had a lifestyle design that was ideal for our human physiology, didn't have all this information overload of media and bright advertising everywhere, people that realize there are no boundaries are feeling the direct impact of that consciously, whereas others are only feeling it subconsciously, and they don't know why they're doing certain things, like maybe having addictions to certain things to cope with this. Then they think, oh, I have an addiction, but really it's trying to cope with this life that we've created that we're not able to cope with. It's not how we're designed. So people that realize there are no boundaries, there is no self, there's no separate entity there. The trouble is, when we connect with that, we get these professionals giving us pills that help us create these artificial boundaries. And then we don't know that's what is happening. But they're helping us to reestablish boundaries. But not really, because it's only a chemical boundary. It's not really going to help ultimately, because what it does is it blocks the conscious awareness of this pain, of too much information, a lifestyle that is not designed for human physiology, which anyone can test with certain biofeedback devices, maybe like Spire, Muse, perhaps this HeartMath device that I ordered. So it basically blocks that information getting to conscious awareness. But then it doesn't block it ultimately, because it's still there subconsciously. The brain can still process that. And I heard in that documentary, The Solar Revolution, that tranquilizers only allow the most prevalent information to get through to consciousness. So the other information is still getting through to the subconscious or the unconscious or whatever, but it's just not coming up into consciousness. But it's still piling up into the subconscious, where eventually that pile up of stress and information overload and sensitivities and PTSD, the amount that the medication can block reaches a critical point where it implodes because it can no longer block that accumulation of stuff. So the pills give us these artificial boundaries, and then hence people need med changes to sort of give us a different tranquilizer because the body is sort of adapted to that as a barrier. It's almost like if we're taking a certain medication or pill for a long period of time, the subconscious is trying to find ways to eventually break through that, to show us what we're not seeing again. And it's almost like how bacteria and viruses eventually adapt and get smarter. Well, the subconscious does too. And so it eventually breaks through that artificial boundary, and then we have to take some other pills. So then the subconscious has to sort of relearn how to accumulate it. Plus, during the time of crisis where we're trying to get onto another pill or something, we are processing and aware of so much of that stuff that does spill over. So it spills over, but then eventually, then we say, oh, well, the meds aren't working, when really it just spilled over. And then the spilling over process takes a certain amount of time, and then by the time a quote pill starts working again, really it's just that enough of it poured out that it's sort of evened out into a lake where we can put up another barrier again, so it eventually overflows into conscious awareness. So these pills possibly don't really help that much anyway, except that they create the artificial barrier and allow it to build up so we can kind of go on sort of functioning for the time being. But then eventually it overflows and we're totally non-functional. So the other opposite would be maybe not taking the meds, being so sensitive that we can't really function in society at all. But maybe that would allow us to learn how to create a world for ourselves that does work for us, because we're sensitive and we can test what is helping and what's not. So maybe I'll do a trial at some point when I'm not on quetiapine. I'm like, well, what does my heart look like when I'm doing XYZ? And maybe the quetiapine is helping me do XYZ, but maybe I don't have to do XYZ. Maybe I can do something completely different if I listen to my heart. So these are the types of experiments that I'm looking forward to doing, and this whole idea of artificial boundaries, like knowing there's no boundary, knowing that things are going to get to me and accumulate, and a pill might temporarily prevent it from coming into conscious awareness, but it is going to build up and overflow. Well, I don't know what to do with that. I might have to get away on a short trip right now. I don't know. I need to think this through. And I'm going to stop now and talk on a different video. I don't want to repeat too much of what I've said in the past if I get a subtle hint that I have talked about it before. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about how a mental illness diagnosis could be another spiritual path. There are many spiritual paths. And it would be cool to write a book about that at some point, maybe, or perhaps only talking about it on video, I don't know. But I also had an insight about how we're getting turned into diseases and diagnoses because we're not taught or facilitated to step into what we came here to do. So we get mechanized into the machine of economy and consumerism, and then that consumes us, and we end up with these diseases and diagnoses. And then a lot of times our families or parents are afraid for us but really we're not able to communicate what is going on inside of us or anything. So then the only way we can communicate is by having some kind of disease or diagnosis to be focused on. Because, well, I don't want to say because, but so instead of someone taking notes on my symptoms, what I'm seeing, which is turned into a hallucination, if one, say, was talking to someone who was going to help someone write a book, that other person, that professional, would be taking notes on the more that the brain could see in order to help share it. So it's interesting because oftentimes in these visionary states of consciousness, or whatever the heck you want to call them, one can see more, and one doesn't know how to translate it to the linear realm, to the realm of things unfolding in space and time, seemingly sequentially. So then to reconnect with that seeming sequential unfolding of things in space and time, one is talking to someone who's able to linearize it, but what they're doing is translating it into symptoms of one's mental illness as opposed to what it really is, which is being able to see the totality and the whole and how we're all interconnected. So then we re-interconnect by connecting with like a mental health system. And then we need to believe that we're mentally ill in order to continue to function in that reality. And that's part of what scares me a little bit, is that the less I believe in like this mental illness, I'm wondering if I'm like putting myself in danger from exiting linear reality, because if I think of it as something else, then I might go to that other something else type world, which may include something totally different that other people can't see, hence I won't be there. So that's where it gets a bit scary, and that's where one is willing to sort of drug and poison and tranquilize the brain to make it sort of slow down and reattach with linear perception. So that's when I think, well, it might be better to forget all these insights, forget everything that I think I might be able to see and talk about, and just go be linear in some menial existence and find joy in that. And perhaps that's the only way. Like, I don't know. Because if I think, whoa, I'm going to share something and help people see things differently, people don't want to see things differently. So I don't know if there's a point in that. And symptoms equal there is more that you can't see, aka the one who's seeing symptoms, in another. There is a music playing that you can't hear. There is a different rhythm. But when the other person can't see that, one meets as this person has symptoms and this person is normal, and perhaps it's a helpful process to help bring that person back down to normal, or they'll likely disappear into the light. And if one hasn't done that yet, then it's not time. So I was thinking about too how if one could learn to reestablish and maintain one's own boundaries, like put up boundaries on purpose intentionally, not as the ego that is a boundary that's there unintentionally, and then we react based on those patterns and we just think that's our personality. Could we create boundaries somehow So I talked about the possibility of supplements, creating some boundaries. Maybe also seeing what is coming out from the other. One can acknowledge it, but then not take it on, and that could be a way of putting up boundaries. There could be a way of doing that, putting up boundaries by seeing clearly. Whereas right now I'm feeling like seeing clearly just makes one a passive absorber of everything that's coming in this direction by virtue of whatever situation is happening. So I really don't know. And I'm wondering if this is where technology can help us, such as this HeartMath device, possibly. And it is possible that I am going to need to drug myself with more psychopharmaceuticals in the near future. And I'm wondering if when we have no boundaries, we need to be in beauty. Or at least now we need to. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll go away next weekend if this is still feeling really intense. And I'm just wondering if my environment isn't coherent with being boundaryless or boundless. And I was also thinking in terms of being a highly sensitive person, or some people are said to have multiple chemical sensitivities. Well, I made up a new thing about multiple human sensitivities. So perhaps some beings who are boundless and vulnerable are sensitive to certain types of human beings who have certain patterns of thought, or have certain morphogenetic fields, or who have certain attractor patterns, and have certain ego types, right? Maybe. Because when one is really empty and vulnerable, one can get situated into those patterns by that. And then I can see why some people really avoid people, because we pick up on it and we speak it out sometimes as we are boundless. So some of the people that are displaying the most bizarre behavior are picking up on the attractor patterns of and the morphogenetic field of other people, their DNA and what it's sort of radiating through past generations, and then reenacting those things out. So, like, how do we heal from what is vibrating from our DNA? I really don't know. So we're kind of speakers of the truth of what is operating, but then it's seen as the other person's behavior and not really as these different situations happening based on all of humanity, all of one's past, all of one's fate, destiny, blah, blah, everything unfolding and folding back up. So like maybe some people are sensitive to violent patterns in others, and then, you know, some people have a tendency to be like get violence against them or something, but that could be patterns of the past. And I really don't know. I'm just sort of talking and making stuff up from what I've written down. And I'm wondering if I'm sort of living in the morphogenetic field of fear because of how society is designed in a fear-based way. So being sensitive, eventually that all that accumulation of fear will like spill over, and it'll have an effect on my epigenetic matrix, and I'll start perceiving and acting based on fear. And I don't know if there's anything I can do about that, especially because I've spent some time sort of going on the upward trend, and now seems like I'm decelerating, or I could still be accelerating, but now it's getting to be too much. And so that's why I'll probably try the branched chain amino acids just to see what effect they have on me. Perhaps if I had the D-serine, I would take some of that, because this feels kind of like, not like psychosis. Like the thing is, last time it was less psychosis and more like past trauma. and processing that. So probably have to process more past trauma, and unfortunately that usually re-traumatizes some beings around me because they play into that energy. So I'm wondering if this time I can pretend I'm okay, like I'm pretending I'm okay now, but when it clicks over into major crisis, can I still like pretend I'm okay to the degree that they believe that I'm okay? Because then that way they're not going to change their behavior and start playing into some of these fearful patterns that are coming out of my heart. And I wondered, what is the best way to set up boundaries? And then I made a little acronym for BEST, which is Boundless Energy Space Time. So we sort of realized we're this boundless energy, but how do we sort of bring that into the whole space-time realm that people believe is like a linear thing? So for boundless energy, that's like non-linear. But then how do we bring that into space-time, which is linear? And maybe some of the ways that we do that is by reenacting some of these old patterns as dramas with those around us to sort of bring it into space-time and material realm by like acting some of these things out. And that's where I feel that this family constellation thing could be helpful for me to sort of get those things out of my system, so then my family doesn't have to reenact that crap with me or whoever's around. And wondering also a way for these boundaries is to move away from those things. So since we're vulnerable and sensitive, sometimes we can get sort of convinced to play into things because, oh, we don't have any boundaries, it's okay, everything's acceptable. But there could be a way to see the danger and move away from it and negate it right away. So just because we don't feel we have boundaries and we're related to everything doesn't mean we have to participate in everything that seems to come into our perceptual field and our epigenetic matrix. A gesture could just be to turn and walk away. And so, yeah, I'm kind of interested in that. And also, it's not your mental illness, but humanity's belief, and not just belief, but actually operating as separate ego entities. This denies intelligence that would make us like an intelligent swarm of ants. Can we go from the harm of separation, separate ego selves, to a swarm of intelligence? Because when we're separate egos, we only have relative intelligence. We have this mechanized intelligence that translates things in terms of past patterns, and it's not seeing what is happening now. And so it's interesting because I'm just having an insight into this, and I have no idea if it's true, but when there's a being in the situation that is seeing what is happening now, and then another being who is operating based on past patterns, the being who's seeing what is happening now could actually inadvertently be opening up past patterns even beyond that other individual, because they can see what's happening. So they can fully see these past patterns, and then they see these dramas playing out, and then they almost have to play into them because the being they're looking at is operating in the past. So then one sees these dramas of the past in that person. It could happen differently too. It could be that the being that's in the present is able to bring the other being into the present. I feel like that's what's somewhat happening in so-called higher states, so-called mania. One is bringing somebody else into a different experience of themselves that they may or may not be aware of because of that energy. But then perhaps that is when the same vulnerable being who was in a state like mania starts to come down, then now we're not bringing out this new side in a being that might interact with us. We're bringing out all these past patterns in the being around us, and then we have to play in those dramas. And, well, I don't know if we have to. Maybe that's another way to set up the boundaries when the drama starts happening, when it just sort of says, no thanks. I don't know. And then I got onto a bit of a different topic, which was related to how when we go in these crisis states, we need 24-hour support. And there's not many places, there's only a few places in the world that'll give 24-hour support and not use medication as a first line of stopping the crisis from happening, but be with someone and allow them to move through it. And then it's really, really expensive, and there are very few. But what if we could learn our own spiritual emergence first aid? So if I'm in a spiritual emergence or emergency, I'm the first responder because I'm there with myself. But usually I don't know what to do, or oftentimes I don't. So I might call 911 for help. It feels like an emergency. So if I'm first on the scene, there are things that I can do to help myself. And just like if I cut my arm, if in the past I had learned to stitch up my own wound, I could stitch up my own wound if I had the supplies and the skill. But most of the time I realize, well, I don't have to learn to stitch up my own wound because there are people, if I call for help, emergency, they'll stitch up my wound. Now, there are also people who will stitch up the wound in consciousness in a spiritual emergence, but they're going to do it with the medical paradigm. And that's not the greatest way, per se. It does a lot more harm sometimes, or often it does. So what skills and things do I need to have in order to be able to get through a spiritual emergence on my own? Because even if I'm someone who wants to do it on my own and then have a supporter, most people don't have time to agree to be my 24-hour support for the next 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months or however long it takes. So knowing that, I'm again left with myself. And that's why I've done things like sign up for online groceries and get certain supplements and things in my presence. And hopefully I'll get some of these other biofeedback devices soon too, so I can record some of the data of this and learn how to stitch up my own wounds, just like I could stitch up my arm if I learned how to do that. But there could be some wounds that I just can't stitch up on my own. Like it'd be very hard to stitch up a wound on my back or something like that. And there could be equivalents to that in spiritual emergence. But there could be a lot that we can learn to do ourselves. And I don't know, but that's something I'm sort of exploring. So before, at previous times, I was exploring different ways to hopefully stop the crisis from ever happening again. And now I'm sort of wondering, well, there's going to be this reemergence of it, so how can I take care of my own wounds? Because if I don't, other people who are trained in different ways are going to take care of those wounds in the ways that they know how, which could be anything. It could be meds. It could be something like ECT. And so I'm wondering if I can create my own emergence room, kind of synonymous with an emergency room, to be able to do everything for myself. And I pretty much have almost everything I need to do most things for myself here. The trouble is there are other beings around who might want to play into some of the awful states of consciousness I'm experiencing, that if I was alone by myself would be easier to process, not putting other people in my morphogenetic field. Like I talk about other people's morphogenetic field perhaps leading to this state, but it's happened 5 or 6 times in the last 7 years, no matter what's happening. So take responsibility. People are coming into my morphogenetic field and then they're having to unfortunately say things to me that I don't want to hear, or play out dramas that are kind of painful and might be replaying from generations of my family I don't even know about. It's so weird, like I don't even know. Since learning about the family constellation therapy, I've had a few insights into like, wow, some of the things that played out through the last few months, it's like, whose was that? Whose was that in generations past? So, and it's old dead stuff. And it's perhaps by replaying the drama now, it can die for real and not again come into play, come into the past, come into affecting the present moment, and then playing out dramas of the past instead of perceiving and being in the moment. I really don't know. If this crisis comes early and I realize that it was a mistake to be in this location, then, it could be not good at all. But hopefully I can stay calm with some of the relaxation training I've been doing and things like that. It's hard to say. Perhaps if I say, well, I'm experiencing a little bit of distress right now, like I was thinking about getting more employment, like that's what people seem to care about is employment and things. But now I'm feeling distressed, so it's sort of hard and blah, blah, but I don't know. So I'm wondering if one can create oneness or boundless energy CPR. Create safety until we become rebound to the body in space and time. But that might be a clue too, that for me, even entertaining these insights right now could be something that isn't coherent with this body right now. What could be more coherent with this body right now is being out for a walk in nature. Body in present space, time, in nature. So starting tomorrow, since it's going to be even nicer than today, and I had a bit of stuff to do today, I need to make that my first priority, is getting outside. And I don't know if that will help to mitigate some of this, but as I'm talking to myself about these insights, I'm having insights into what I could possibly do. And I also wrote down that I had an insight into why extreme eating plans could be helpful in setting up boundaries. Now, this seems like totally unrelated, right? But when my brain is in this state, I can see possibly important, significant, meaningful relationships between things that are quite far apart in obvious relationships. So, for example, why extreme eating plans could be helpful. Well, for me, I have in the past been a raw vegan, whole food, plant-based person. Now, if I decided to do that, doing that lifestyle actually creates a physical boundary between myself and other people who aren't living that lifestyle. So if I do that lifestyle, I'll naturally spend more time making food and eating by myself, eating high vibration food, vibrating at a higher level, which keeps lower vibrations away sometimes. So like right now, if I'm not able to keep my vibration up and it's sort of going down, if I ate super high vibration food, it's possible that my vibration would stay up. Plus, I'll be less apt to dine with people who are drinking and not eating good food. So that keeps me away from that type of morphogenetic field where there's this energy of chaotic eating lifestyles, eating for like pleasure and not for nourishment. And pleasure creates all sorts of trouble. So this creates a boundary in form in that it informs me I'll just naturally do my own thing in that lifestyle and not be so much with other physical entities who are not doing that. And I'll be fine with it because I'll be happy and vibrating at a high level. So it could create a physical boundary in that actions are different, and it could also be that vibrations are different enough to not have that in life so much. And it could also be that the cells of the body are very happy. So I'm reading this book called Deep Happy because I got it really cheap on Amazon when I was trying to top up my order to get free shipping. And there were a couple lines in there that really resonated in terms of how happiness is a body experience. Like happiness of the cells of the body. So perhaps if the cells of the body are happy, then we're naturally happy. Versus making happy into some kind of mental movement or needing of external things. And so that resonates with a lot of things on a lot of different levels. So again, that's where that whole raw vegan thing could come in as well. But I do like that idea of it sort of sets one apart from the mainstream if one is doing some kind of high vibration eating lifestyle and creates a natural boundary without trying to like put up these mental boundaries or have to have some kind of ego personality pattern to have boundaries, which is only reenacting patterns of the past which aren't there. Whereas eating a high vibration diet would lead to one vibrating higher and being in a different world than people who aren't doing that. Kind of like a different tribe in the world. So, yeah, there was a time in my life when I spent a lot of time around like raw vegan-y type people, and I was quite happy. My body was quite happy for a long period of time. So, I don't know. I don't think, again, there's causation like, oh, eating raw food diet's going to cure anything, but it might help with creating some kind of boundary. It could also make one too high. Like I was raw vegan before I was diagnosed, so who knows? I don't know what's right. I just had an insight into the possibility of how certain diet styles and certain lifestyles are a boundary. So if I decided to take street drugs and live on the street, that's a different lifestyle that's going to put me in different morphogenetic fields with different things happening to me according to that level of resonance. So yeah, raw veganism could do that a little bit as well and create this boundary in that one is doing something in material actuality, eating a certain lifestyle that very few are doing. So it sort of puts one up in this reality with very few based on a physical thing, not some kind of conceptual belief or like thought pattern or ideal, but just an actuality of nourishing the body fully. So I might experiment with that again at some point. Based on what I just said, I should think, oh, I should just switch now. But I am doing quite well in terms of food. I'm doing the beans or lentils, like pretty healthy canned organic lentils with low sodium, with broccoli and different things. So it is also said that eating certain ways can be more grounding. So raw vegan plant-based can be less grounding, and one could be vibrating too high, have too much energy, and then maybe have trouble sleeping. Then if one is sort of, there's two ways to look at it that aren't mutually exclusive. It's like one could eat a certain way to ground oneself. I read somewhere that people who are vegetarian or vegan sometimes eat a cheeseburger to ground themselves when they're in a high state of consciousness. It's like do something really yuck to bring yourself down that the body isn't used to. It'll almost like make you physically sick, which then helps to reattach oneself to the body. So again, being in the body with healthy food or unhealthy food, or being in the body, like even right now, I want to make a note to get the book Practicing the Power of Now, because I used to do that, but now I feel like I need to reacquaint myself with that, because before I was practicing the power of now to have a clear mind and not have thought. But I feel like I could possibly, again, practice from this new perspective, which is having more access to insight, which can be, it's not really an intrusion, it's lovely, but it's also an intrusion in a way that, here I am sitting talking about these insights when I could be out under the sun. One is more natural than the other, and that's being outside under the sun. Not that one can do that all the time, but there's no answer, and that's okay. But I also wrote down, related to this diet style thing, that if we don't do something different as boundless beings, like live a different lifestyle, have a different diet style, live in a different type of environment, then we get reassimilated. Because we eventually, that energy that would allow us to resonate higher than the consensus, gravity eventually brings us down, like gravity and consciousness. And it's heavy. It brings us back down to this heavy world of materiality. However you say that, I don't think I said it quite right. And so this assimilation process, interestingly enough, is being assimilated back to separation. Bringing down consciousness back to perceiving from the level of separation. And it's painful because it's not that way. So we have to feel all this pain of separation in order to feel separation, because separation is pain. And being around that level of perception that sees from that worldview is painful, especially when one has been in a world where we were differentiated into oneness. So that's interesting how it's assimilation, which seems like joining, into separation, and differentiation, which seems like being different, into oneness. And but we haven't integrated the oneness, it seems. Well, I haven't, that's for sure. I'm sure there's a lot of beings out there who have integrated the oneness. And I don't know how, I don't know if it's possible to integrate it around others who aren't ready to be one. Ready to be one. I remember making this thing ready to see, which is like an E that's red E, 2C, the number 2, and then the letter C. But this one's ready, or the E that's red, 2, the number 2, B1. So I should probably make that t-shirt. And then this is when things are like talking to myself about something, and then I have another insight, and then if I wanted to make a t-shirt like that, that would take hours and days. And almost everything I talk about, I could create something that would take hours and days, and this is how it expands exponentially, and I can't keep up. And I can't create any of it because I'm busy talking about everything that I see. And maybe I'm not supposed to create anything of it. Like, if someone wants to create some of it, go ahead. And I feel like I'm ready to be one, but I don't know where to do that. And there is nowhere. And that could be double meaning in that there is nowhere right now designed for that. And also there is no such thing as where and when. So in terms of linearity, but we have to create an artificial self-boundary. With the opaque self, it's no longer transparent, which is a term I learned from Thomas Metzinger, transparent self model, in his book, The Ego Tunnel, that I didn't read, but I heard his talk. It's become opaque, we are aware of it. But again, it's opaque, but it's also not there. It's not real. So then that's where needing to create an artificial self-boundary comes in. Meaning creating an artificial self to give the appearance of self to other selves. Because if we don't, and this is where creating our artist self could come into play, like create a self based on our art, so then people know what we're about. Otherwise, we will be vulnerable to playing other self games. And that's probably why I have this intuition to like create my artist self, because then people will kind of know, oh, well, this person's an artist. They're not a person with a mental illness trying to be normal. But yeah, so I'm wondering if that's a good disguise. It's like, okay, I'm nobody. There's nothing there. But I'm an artist of some kind. Ooh. But I wrote that we have to create an artificial self boundary, because otherwise it'll be given to us in the form of medication. And then that artificial self boundary and that paradigm is trying to get back some semblance of our old self to again function in old ways in the old paradigm. But a new paradigm would be, oh my gosh, my self is going away. I need to reinvent myself in order to be able to continue to operate as a self, because there is no self there. And if I don't turn myself into some kind of artist, then I'm going to be turned into a mental patient. And yeah, I don't know if that's true, but here I am talking to myself and having insight at the same time and being like, okay, quickly do that or shit's gonna hit the fan. So I might talk another video, I don't know.